So the final portion, well, not the final one, Tim will do a meeting wrap-up, but we did have a roundtable for state DOTs, near, intermediate, and long-term plans for the selection, adoption, adaptation, and implementation of new fuel technologies, which you heard a lot of it here, just on this one, which this is about the newest we can go, and then, of course, there's the EV world, which is another part, so I guess that's what we got. We got microphones. Just raise your hand, and we can get this to you so you can talk about anything that your state is doing, or it might be thinking you're going to have to do, or things you really don't want to do. So any state that has anything new and unique, or has a plan that's being worked on, I was just talking with Connecticut and New York DOT about this last hydrogen thing, and Connecticut and New York are going to pursue looking into this with Freightliner probably to the point of maybe building the first snowplow truck in hydrogen. They like it. They're going to bring it back to see if they can get the seed money to fund it. A couple applications would be, like out here, all the DOTs, a great one is a tractor trailer, hauling equipment, that's a great one. But what this group and no one else has is to answer the questions, not a transit bus, but what about snow and ice? Can they do it? And both Jim and Shane like the idea, and they're going to run with it when they get back. So with that, anybody wants to start in talking about what they think they might have to do, or?
So maybe we approach it a different way. There's several of you in the room that have at least headed in the direction of alternate fuels and the likes, and then there are many of us in the room who haven't even dipped a toe in yet. And so certainly there are those that have learned some of those lessons. Who wants to start with educating those like us in Kansas on where to start, what to remember, what to think of as you head down that path? I'm looking at you, Jim Chupas.
Boy. Well, be honest with you, in Connecticut, we're dipping our toes in the water, other than pretty much, at least for DOT's sake, other than our transit. Our transit has a mandate to be electric. Was set to be 2025. I think they pushed it to 2030 or 2035. I can't remember, but they pushed it out because they knew it was unattainable at that point in time. We are definitely getting the push to look at it at many arenas. Had the joy of being able to sit on, we call it Pier 46, which is public utilities. Really, that's driven around the EV side of the house. We're able to dodge, we'll just say dodge that bullet on our end right now on the emergency services side. But we haven't really, touched it. The DAS fleet, our administrative fleet, has to have 75% of their fleet has to be EV by 2030. So they gotta, because they cycle their fleet in a six-year cycle, so they gave them that 6 years to get to that 75, which was nice enough to do that. We do currently do some stuff. It did get really talked about here. We're running, our what we call our champ vehicles, our service patrol vehicles on the road. We have 15 of them to run the 8. They run so 30 drivers. I have those that are driven on propane because we're using a commercial infrastructure that's available in those areas. So it's kind of convenient. So it's working for us right now. It works in that arena. We haven't brought it into the emergency services side yet. And I have a couple of propane-driven units in Bridge Department, which has a fueling station right across the street, commercial fueling station across the street. So you know, their Class 7 dump trucks that they use for hauling materials and stuff like that. Dick is right. The Transit Authority was running hydrogen. It still is running hydrogen. I started with one. They got up to 6 transit buses. 3 are still running. I don't know what their plan is to advance that past that future. You know, the other things, we'll call it quick gains, easy gains. We've ran biodiesel for many years. We run it 9 months a year. We switch over for the winter and switch right back. We're gonna look more towards the renewable side, see what we can do there on that end, just to, listen, for us, it's how do we, in Connecticut, we're driven on how do we reduce that carbon footprint. And like Dick said, we had a conversation with Shane, and I think I don't know if he's still here or he had to leave, but with working with Freightliner to see what the potentials are there. I do know, like, through our environmental, our DEP, and working with the commissioner over there, Katie Dykes, they have a large amount of money for initiatives like that could at least in Connecticut, could fund that, and then work with Clean Cities. There's another avenue possibly for the fuel infrastructure. So.
Anybody want to add anything? I mean, unfortunately, a lot of our large fleets, those folks had to leave, California and the New York and all that are further along than a lot of the rest of us. But you know, obviously, you have to be concerned about infrastructure. You have to be, if you're ready to dip your toe in, you're looking, like Jim said, at the low-hanging fruit, the applications that make the most sense, that are centered around where you might have access to the fuel, whether it be chargers or natural gas or hydrogen or whatever it might be. But for us in Kansas, it's a struggle because we have so low density around particular stations, and the cost of infrastructure is so high to fuel 2, 3, 4, or 5 vehicles or whatever that you have to think all that through. So we're ready for somebody else to build the infrastructure. You want to do that?
I'll build the infrastructure.
Okay. You are welcome to come and put it in place. The PO is a different issue. If you want it paid for it, that's a problem. But if you want to build it and bring it, bring it. Yeah. So you guys don't want to hear me stammer, so somebody needs to talk. Otherwise, we're going home. Don't give that incentive either. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think hydrogen makes, as this was the best news I've heard today. I mean, you know, we're in Florida, we've had 2 direct impacts. The EV doesn't make any sense because you can be out of power for weeks and you can't charge vehicles.
Yeah.
I mean, I've moved to Tallahassee now in central office, but from Miami. And we have more people come and say, Glenn, electric vehicles. You forget our deployments. We had an Irma come through in 2017, the Keys didn't have electricity for 6 weeks. You know, so I said, what are we gonna do? We're gonna put an electric vehicle on a base station that's powered by a generator?
Yeah.
Hydrogen or something like that is the only thing that makes sense, because, you know, Florida, we just don't know. When the power goes out, it really goes out. It's no joke. For weeks, you can go out. And so electric vehicles, then how you gonna replace it? How you gonna charge it? So that right there says, we gotta come up with something better. Now, this hydrogen solution, so I'm waiting for like June, somebody's going to do a little legwork, so we go to leadership.
Yeah.
How about this?
Yeah.
Because, you know, leadership, their first thing is, how are we gonna charge theirs?
And a bucket truck application is one of those. That would be another good one to have that.
So, well, I like the way the infrastructure is set, so the on-site, you know, production of hydrogen it kind of follows the same suit as the gas diesel station of today.
Right.
With very few requirements and less taxing, probably on that electric backbone that, you know, all these power companies are gonna struggle to get this. They struggle to keep what they need now.
Yep.
And they're gonna struggle, especially as we get more rural, you know.
I agree completely. The downside obviously is when you lose electricity, you lose the ability to produce hydrogen. And so, you know, so if something happens to your water supply or to your electricity supply, then you're relying on stored hydrogen presumably to be brought to you. And they do make generators. It's like that Tesla hauling the generator down the road in it. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
In Louisiana, we kind of have the same feeling as Glenn in Florida, that the disasters and emergency response kind of stuff, that when hurricane comes, we're out of power for weeks and weeks and whatever. So the hydrogen definitely sounds better to me. A couple years ago, we had a push from up above to start trying to get EVs in our fleet, and we didn't really want it, but we were at least exploring it, and thankfully we had an administration change last year, so the EV stuff has been put aside. I mean, we're a heavy oil and gas state, so we rely heavily on gas and diesel. I mean, I would love to even try renewable diesel, but there's a plant 30 minutes from my office, but everything that they make gets sent to California, I believe. So, so I mean, that's all I had. I mean, I'm just reiterating kind of Glenn's feelings, but I mean, if we get another push to explore some kind of alternative fuel, I think I'd be more on board with going with hydrogen versus any other options.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of hydrogen cheerleaders here in the DOT fleets, just because we're so shell-shocked with the logistics of thinking about EVs and heavy-duty applications and all that. It's hard for us to, at least for me, to conceptualize how that works for us. And so if there's anything that we can do to help prop that industry up a little bit, I think we would be eager to do that. But I don't know what that looks like.
Just a question, and it kind of brought up about power, especially like Florida brought up. A typical fueling station a garage might have to make hydrogen, could that would a regular standby generator that a garage would have, would that power the electrical source where you could continue, as long as you had water, or do you need some really high, wattage to do this?
We need a 500 kilowatt, power load. That's really what we're looking at relative to it. So a generator, are there generators out there that can produce that? Yes, but a typical one that you're going to have, at a shop, probably not. So I did want to respond to the emergency response, questions. I'll be honest with you, it's a challenge for any of us under these situations, because our approach is we're taking power from the grid to produce hydrogen. So if the power is not there, I'm not producing hydrogen. Now the reality is I can store it for a period of time. So it's not an immediate power's off, oh, I'm done. So I don't want to mislead anybody to think that, well, hydrogen can be the end all be all in regards to that. However, what we can do under those circumstances, just like what happens in hurricanes today, is we can truck in hydrogen to be responsive to that. We can set it up where it's connected into a station, and we have that fuel source. So we have capabilities to be able to respond to that. But the types of emergency response you're talking about, where power is down for literally, and I come from Houston, Texas. I'm a Coloradan now, but I came from Houston, so we definitely understand when the power goes down, it could be down for weeks, and that's a challenge. It just is. There are things that we can do with hydrogen that can address that, but it is a challenge right now.
And on that, then I would imagine the location where somebody would put in a station has to have a power grid. If you're looking at that type of watt, that's a pretty good power grid.
Yeah, so like I indicated, our conversations with the utilities have basically indicated if it's below a megawatt, they're not overly concerned. Obviously, it's dependent upon exactly where you are. If you go over a megawatt, and a lot of these things, these data centers that people are talking about, these supercharger stations, that they're talking about to fuel battery electric semi-trucks. Those are megawatt stations. Go talk to your utility about putting in megawatts and watch them blanch immediately. So the 500 kilowatt, that wasn't our intention. We were really looking from a scale point of view, but it was a benefit for us because the utilities, didn't look at us as being a huge concern for them right now. Whereas when you're talking megawatt, that scares the living S out of them.
So what are we talked a lot about the electrolysis production of hydrogen. The other, with natural gas, I guess, where you produce it, is that as electrical dependent, or is that just a chemical reaction, or how does that work? Is that you, Andrew?
I'm not a steam methane reforming expert, but I believe you can use different energy sources. You can, sure.
So
Right. So, yeah, the electrolysis method of production is much more dependent on electricity, as the name implies.
It's a higher.
If anyone else knows more about SMR, yeah.
Steam methane, that's why when, I think John was talking about it, typically the cost for hydrogen produced through steam methane is less because it's less energy dependent. However, the flip side of that is, I have carbon emissions, I have to do something with it.
Right.
Do I sequester it? Great. How are you gonna do that? Don't know. Or am I simply emitting it? Well, if that's the case, then I have a direct emissions of carbon at the point of generation. That's a challenge.
And not to mention that, but speaking of that a little bit, when you're talking about the electrolysis technology, that's portable. That's scalable and portable, whereas the steam reformation, you actually have to have a processing plant to do that. So even though it's cheaper on a mass scale, it's a little more restrictive to needing an infrastructure footprint, per se.
Good point.
So if somebody's mass producing hydrogen, they're likely using the steam method.
They are right now.
Yeah.
That is true right now.
If someday they were able to use salt water, potentially that would be the electrolysis process.
Well,
That's also going to be even more.
I don't think
power
that the
than-
water supply is really the limiting factor. Right
Yeah.
now, a lot of people are looking at electrolyzers that aren't so reliant on precious metals, right? So, they're rare earth metals, catalytic materials that are kind of driving this electrolysis process that are necessary, similar to what's in your catalytic converter in your car. And that is the real barrier to the larger scale systems. Once we start talking about producing hydrogen, beyond the megawatt scale, the cost driver is really those catalytic materials. So a lot of people are working on that right now, but
Is the fuel cell production also a precious metal issue?
yes, yep.
I
The
didn't
precious metals are the cost drivers.
realize. Yeah.
But the precious metals relative to what's in a battery is much less.
Oh, okay.
The reality is the vehicles we drive today have a lot of precious metals in them.
Yep.
But, as we're scaling into this zero emissions, the amount of precious metal demand is going up.
Interesting.
But water is an issue. Western Kansas,
Obviously, yeah.
And we drove out here in eastern Colorado, and there was a river that was, all you seen was sand.
Sure.
So, water kind of is an issue in here.
Yes. I'm not saying that it's not. To give some perspective on these stations, right, in the 600 gallons a day, that's approximately the water consumption that you would see at, a medium-sized restaurant. So it's not, perhaps, I don't know, perhaps it's not as, consuming as you might think, but the source of the water is certainly an issue.
Do you know the net on water to produce versus out the tailpipe?
before you answer that real quick, we've got about
Okay.
So if you were on the 11 o'clock buses, then I'm gonna start taking names out there now.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, it's 100%.
100%.
So
Yeah, you're not-
all of that hydrogen you're producing through cracking water is basically recombining with oxygen and forming water again. Gallon in, gallon out. It's just not a gallon out
Gallon.
of the same place.
Right. It goes in the atmosphere and it'll rain down on you someday, but. Yeah.
It will. I mean, it goes into the atmosphere, it goes into the circular atmosphere. The only challenge is, I can't tell you it's gonna rain where you live.
Yeah.
Rain where he lives.
Rain in the ocean and then.
Rain in the ocean. But that becomes a challenge, because I can't control where that water is ultimately deposited.
Maybe this is a helpful point too, but we typically think about water as a liquid. Most of the water that's coming out of these fuel cells is still in gaseous form. It's still steam, vapor. Yeah. It's not. Yeah, it's not trickling down on the road.
All right, guys. We're not going to force any more conversation if you don't have it. So. Ride and drive. Oh, yeah. Awesome. Y'all heard that, I assume. If you haven't had the opportunity to drive either a hydrogen or an electric-powered Class 8 Nikola dump truck or Nikola truck, sounds like this is your opportunity. You may not get that opportunity again anytime soon. So with that, folks, I know people are trying to catch flights. People are eager to get out of here. People are eager to go drive a truck. Do that. We really appreciate everybody's sticking it out to the very last second here. So thank you all. Thank you, Colorado. Thank you, NCPP. And with that, I think we're adjourned until the next one. So, all right, thank you all.